Activision Blizzard continues to be embroiled in controversy after the DFEH began essentially a PR crapfest involving exposing Activision Blizzard for their culture of harassment, abuse, misconduct, and discrimination. Activision Blizzard has admitted to facing difficulties attracting and retaining talent, acknowledging that among the reasons being that recent litigation involving the company relating to workplace and employee concerns. I love how they're still downplaying this issue, calling these concerns instead of tangible issues that has ruined lives, traumatized people, and done tangible psychological harm. And related media attention can be expected to have an adverse effect on our ability to attract and retain employees and has resulted in work stoppages. The only hope that there is right now is that Microsoft is buying out Activision Blizzard, and it does seem to be pretty likely that Bobby Kotick, the awful CEO of Activision Blizzard, who has been in that position for like 3 decades, will no longer be around, so maybe some positive change can start to take place. But until then, things are about to get worse for Activision Blizzard executives and the PR surrounding that company. With this lawsuit now underway, recall that one of the most shocking aspects of that DFEH report and filing was learning that there was an employee who took her own life because the harassment got so bad. And all of that is detailed in this article from the Washington Post, published earlier today, which has a headline that's pretty self-explanatory. Activision Blizzard sued for wrongful death by family of employee who took her own life. I'm going to kind of go through this article, give you the key highlights, and share my own opinions along the way. Activision is being sued by the family of an employee who took her own life, with the family blaming the woman's death on harassment and claiming that a supervisor then lied to detectives about his relationship with her. The filing is dated Thursday of this week, so that would be literally yesterday, March 3rd, 2022. The lawsuit was specifically filed by Carrie Moynihan's parents, and Carrie is the 32-year-old finance manager at Activision Blizzard who was found deceased during a company retreat in 2017, and the lawsuit claims that harassment was a significant factor leading to her death. This was apparent from the DFEH report, which did expose how at a holiday party before her passing, male coworkers passed around a picture of her privates. And the report also referenced a situation where one of her supervisors, an abuser in a position of power, brought inappropriate toys with him on the business trip where she was found deceased. Now, recall the response that Activision Blizzard provided when all this blew up in their face with a DFEH report exposing all of this back in July of 2021. Scrolling down, we can find in this Verge article what they said, how just outraged they were that the DFEH would make such accusations, stating that DFEH includes distorted and, in many cases, false descriptions of Blizzard's past. It would only be shortly after the release of this statement that a bunch of Activision Blizzard employees would corroborate the DFEH's report, but they also directly respond to the DFEH mentioning the passing of this employee, how we are sickened by the reprehensible conduct of the DFEH to drag into the complaint the tragic suicide of an employee whose passing has no bearing whatsoever on this case. Wow. And with no regard for her grieving family. No regard for her grieving family, says the company, who actively went out of their way to bury key information about the circumstances surrounding her passing. I'll get to that in a bit. The Washington Post goes into that. While we find this behavior to be disgraceful and unprofessional, says the company, harboring disgraceful and unprofessional behavior within their company, letting that stuff fly, letting abusers do whatever they want and get away with it. It is undoubtedly an example of how they have conducted themselves throughout the course of their investigation. It is this type of irresponsible behavior from unaccountable state bureaucrats that are driving many of the state's best businesses out of California. Just the audacity of this company's leadership and executives to wag the finger, knowing full well that they're culpable of what they're being accused of. But yeah, more information here about the lawsuit filed in the Los Angeles Superior Court by Paul and Janet Moynihan, the parents of the employee. And the lawsuit claims that their daughter's boss, Greg Restituto, initially lied to investigators in the Anaheim Police Department who were looking into her passing in a hotel room at Disney's Grand Californian Hotel and Spa, concealing that he had an intimate relationship with Moynihan. According to the complaint, Restituto also made apparent efforts to hide evidence of his relationship with Moynihan following her passing. And alongside him, Activision Blizzard actively participated in the cover-up as he was quietly let go. Restituto worked as a senior finance director for Activision Blizzard until May 2017, the month after Moynihan's passing. Restituto did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So clearly Activision Blizzard knew what had transpired. Clearly they knew the role that he played, but they decided to give him a quiet and more dignified exit, which is the exact problem of Activision Blizzard, the way they treat people in position of power regardless of whether they violate laws and policies. And here are even more claims that Activision Blizzard actively tried to bury all of this under the rug. According to the lawsuit, Activision Blizzard then refused to turn over to the police Moynihan's company-issued laptop, said that her cell phone had been wiped. What a coincidence. And also refused to give them access to Restituto's laptop or cell phone. For a company that claims to be innocent in all of this, they sure went way out of their way to wipe clean any digital footprint of the employee and the related abuser. Now, the Washington Post did try to reach out to Activision Blizzard for a comment on this story, and the response provided was a pretty blanket statement that reads that the company is deeply saddened by the tragic death of Miss Moynihan, who was a valued member of the company. You guys treated her like trash to the point where she felt it was no longer worth living, so don't even start with that. We will address the complaint through the legal process as appropriate and out of respect for the family. Oh, I'm sure out of respect for the family, we have no further comment at this time. You don't have any comment at this time because you know you're legally liable for all of this and you know you're at legal risk, not because you're actually in any way, shape, or form concerned for the family. The lawsuit also shared information from its own investigation, noting how on April 27th, 2017, which was the day that the retreat took place where the employee unfortunately took her life. At that time, Restituto back then texted her, "Please don't do that, not tonight. Think about it and make your decision when your mind is clear." Before Moynihan took her own life, Moynihan died in her hotel room roughly a half hour later, the suit claims. What that text was exactly referring to, it's hard to say, but it looks like Restituto knew something about, I don't know, her state of mind or something. Just clearly there was something suspicious going on when a text like that precedes the recipient of that text taking her own life. The suit then reveals additional information and how, based on their investigation, it's clear that Restituto and Activision collaborated in a cover-up. I mean, no surprises there. More recently, after the DFEH's report came out, reports noted that Activision Blizzard was going out of their way to essentially destroy evidence that could compromise them in this case and all of the legal proceedings that they're facing. The complaint claims that Restituto's hotel key card was found in Moynihan's room, but that when he was interviewed by detectives, he concealed the fact that he had been having intimate relations with her and also lied about why he had a key to her apartment. And this next bit is no surprise at all, but it really highlights just how evil corporate executives can be, just to what lengths they'll go to look out for themselves. According to the lawsuit, Moynihan's parents were unaware of the alleged harassment of their deceased daughter until the California DFEH filed its lawsuit last summer. Think about that. All of those years, they had no idea why this all happened the way it did. And it wasn't until this legal proceeding came up that they finally got some answers. Activision Blizzard concealed all that information, knowing the potential legal liabilities that might inflict on the company. They decided to do a full-on cover-up and bury this under the rug, proceed with their day in the hopes that none of this would surface, but surface it did. And so one of the lawsuit's conclusions is that the harassment to which Carrie was subjected was a substantial factor in causing harm to Carrie, tragically culminating in her death at the age of 32. And beyond Activision Blizzard, the lawsuit also criticized Anaheim police for a perfunctory and incomplete investigation, including allegedly failing to dust for fingerprints or question Restituto about the text message preceding her passing that left many unanswered questions. Yeah, I don't know if this was just incompetence on the part of Anaheim police or if Activision Blizzard somehow exerted their influence as a mega rich corporation, but either way, there's certainly something very suspect about the way this investigation was conducted and how they went so easy on a company. Though I don't know, I guess that's not necessarily uncommon given the amount of power influence that these corporations have. I suppose it's a lot easier for law enforcement to overlook their wrongdoings, as has been the case in this society where the rich, unfortunately, are given more leniency when it comes to the law than the people at the bottom of the pyramid or lower in the pyramid. But I'm not in a position to make formal accusations. Obviously, I have my own opinions about how all of this played out. It's abundantly clear that I don't trust anything Activision Blizzard has to say in any way, shape, or form. But the fact that there are lawsuits ongoing, the fact that lawsuits are cropping up, the fact that people seem to be seeking justice and change and all of these things, at the very least, pave the road to hopefully a brighter future for this company that has been troubled for far too long. But only time will tell. But for now, all I can hope for is that I hope the family finds some justice and find some peace in a situation that is just completely emblematic of how incredibly corrupt corporations can be. Or at least that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the latest lawsuit that Activision Blizzard now has to deal with, on top of all the other lawsuits that they're currently facing. Microsoft has their work cut out for them following the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Hopefully they'll do right by the company and do everything in their power to ensure that things improve at a company that has carried itself in unacceptable ways for far too long. But again, one man's take. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.